today is a session on the document 11.30, but specifically with a focus on the control environment, or as we like to talk, the control assessment or the control risk assessment at the financial statement level. There are other sessions that we've had in the past, and I'm sure we will have another session in the future as well, on the relevant controls and the controls at account balance level. I'll also refer to them just now, but today's session is primarily from the financial statement level. Right, so moving on to the first slide then. I want to remind you of an earlier slide that I showed a few weeks ago, and this is really just showing or reminding you of the parts that make up the determination of the risk of material misstatement. So you can see there we look at assertion level risks, fraud, control risk, inherent risk, etc., and then very specifically the control risks, document 11.30. Right, so we are still busy with the risk assessment, only today we will focus on the control risk at the financial statement level. This slide shows the 5 components of internal control. This is theory from the ISA, but then also from the COSO framework. Don't worry, I'm not going to start lecturing you on all the topics. I just want to point out that there are 5 parts, and the one part is the part we always look at. That is the control activities, the account balance level controls. And that then indicated on the slide is dealt with in 11.50, and those are the so-called relevant controls, and we even also deal with them in 11.60 and 61. Of course, when we look at the account balance risks. Right, the others of course are all the financial statement level ones, and for those then I've indicated each and every one of them will be dealt with in the document 11.30. Just have a look at the topics, the sections that are covered, the control environment, the risk assessment process from the client side, the client's information and communications, not only IT or computer stuff, but also manual things, and then of course the monitoring from the client side as to how they monitor these controls. All right, so that is then dealt with in the document 11.30, the control risk assessment document. Now I will start off by looking at the actual document, showing you the document now is then really the layout. Right, so what do we notice? First of all, this is the audit large template, so please do note that you may have a few less questions when you're working on audit small. Also, you will note that there are 4 tabs, one for each of those 4 sections we looked at just now, where you will be assessing different parts or the little small questions for each of these sections. Also note there's a 5th tab, identified risks and conclusions. I will look at that just now, but that's of course where we get to the ultimate conclusion for the control risk at financial statement level. Good. Looking at the questions, a number of questions always relating to the topic at hand. How do I go about this? I will simply answer the question, does management have a high ethical and behavioral standard? Or even number 2, which I like very much, do the owners effectively segregate personal funds, income and expenses from those of the business? Right. Do they, yes or no? If it's a yes, you will be asked to answer or describe the control in the description column. And the standards also says that you have to then indicate how you determine that it is implemented. So you don't just assess the design of the control, also implementation. Right. What if I say no? Well, if I say no, then the first question I will get, please note this is a Pro Premium element, but I will be asked, and I have to assess also from the standard side, is this a risk to me? Is this a problem? Do I want to report this to management? Should I want to report it to management, I get a little space where I can then document the weakness in the control environment, because that's where we are right now. That will go onto the management report, and of course that will then be communicated to them. However, should I say, no, I do not want to report this to management, maybe it's not that important thing, okay, regardless of the question we're looking at the moment, if I feel it's not necessary to report, I will get a little comment block there where I can then document my reason for not communicating to the client. This little button or little cell comes up automatically, but at any of the other matters I can also insert this comment block. Simply right click on the question and select Insert Comment, which will then bring up the comment line and you can add a comment in there. Right. Also note your risk column. At any point in time you can still raise a risk, be it at the control environment, this document where we are right now, but also you know that sometimes you get other risks that you want to record and you've got access to all of them. Okay, that is how every one of these tabs work. If you scroll down to the bottom of each of these tabs, you will see a part that talks about the sources from which you obtained this information. You can simply click in there and say this was a discussion with that or the other person inspecting documents, whatever the case may be. On the right hand side, we've also provided you with a reference block where you can insert the reference, not a risk reference in this case, but rather where you select the document to which you had, of where you had received the information from. You'll see there that I've got 10.31, which is of course your discussions with those charged with governance. And lastly, as I'm sure you are quite familiar with already, at the bottom of each risk document tab, you have to assess on the information obtained in that tab. So here then, assessing the risk with the control environment elements, etc., etc. What is the chances that these controls are working or not working? Low risk that they're not working, looking at the stuff and moving on from there. You do that for each of these tabs. Just quickly looking at the Risk Assessment Procedures tab. There's one thing that I want to point out there, and that is the risk assessment from the client side. Please see the link to the document 11.20 where we've also done our own risk assessment. One of the questions we had in there referred to are the risks that we've identified by any means something we would have expected management to identify. Should that be the case, then I have to come and document it somewhere in this process, because if they miss a lot of risks, but looking at this document, it seems like they've got all these cool procedures in place, well then obviously their controls cannot be effective. So the risk may be higher than just low. You will do the same for information systems as well as monitoring, and at the end go to your identified risks and conclusions tab. You will see that I've already recorded 2 controls in this case. I will show you also how to go into that, but all the risks that you've recorded as control environment risks will be summarized in this section. Going into these, you probably know by now, right-click Edit Risk, and that will activate the risk dialog. I've completed the source, the risk, etc. Just 2 things to note here. On the right-hand side, does the risk affect a specific line item? It is unlikely to affect a specific line item because a control risk at financial statement level affects any or many of the accounts and not just a specific line item. And then, of course, should I have recorded a risk accidentally, oh goody, I did not want to record it or I misinterpreted it, instead of having to go and delete every single thing by hand, I simply click on the Delete Risk button. It will bring up a question. Are you sure that you want to delete this risk? Because we're going to delete everything. As soon as you click on yes, it will take out everything in that risk line item and you will only be left with what you have not deleted. Please note this does delete everything, so be very, very sure before you delete it. And of course, at the end of the risk recording, you click on the Submit button, which will take you back to the tab that you were working in. Right, You still have the sources flowing through. It is the same line showing on each of the documents, so you don't have to complete it more than once, but you can obviously update it. And then our conclusions. The first 4 conclusions, of course, just a summary of the conclusions which we had on each of the 4 tabs. And at the bottom, the last question is really where I come to my overall conclusion on the control risk at financial statement level. Right, where does this go to then? Well, next up it goes to 11.10. I want to just show that to you. In the risk analysis summary document, you may very well be familiar with all the different account level risks, which we have all the other tabs for, but the first tab is the risk at financial statement level tab, and there you can clearly see control risk at financial statement level being low in this case. Okay. Should you be working on 11.10, maybe you're a partner manager reviewing the file, you can simply click on this hyperlink which will open up the document 11.30. After this, where do we go? Well, we go to our audit plan. Our audit plan is document 1220. You can see there clearly the control risk at financial statement level pulling through. The risk is documented as well as our response. I will say something about the response just now. And lastly, this risk assessment, this is now the planning of that, will also pull through to the partner sign-off. You may have seen this before. In the partner sign-off document, this is also a premium function, but you will have a summary of the risk that was assessed, the response, and I can then simply come and conclude here. I will probably rather conclude on saying risk addressed sufficiently or whatever the case may be, and the partner can simply just comment and say accepted or happiness or whatever the case may be. Okay, so the risk that we record, should we be recording, a risk flows through all the way through until the partner sign-off document, especially then if you've got the probe MMX functions. Back to our slides. Just want to skip 2 of these. Right, I talked about the responses to the risks. Just a reminder, your risk at financial statement level, there are a number of responses that you can use for that. You can see those are the ones you will probably use. And then just to end off, remember then your documents flow from 11.30, which is the risk assessment for the control environment, to 11.10, your risk summary, responses, 1220, audit plan, and then concluding on that risk. We've come to the end of the presentation